No one is more surprised than me that I get to be here with you today to talk about diversity. Not because I don't think it's important, but let me just keep it real. I've had senior leadership roles across discipline, but lately, telling people I'm a global diversity leader seems to be the thing that can clear a room faster than someone microwaving fish in the office. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, is a set of words that, even on their best day and in their highest purpose, seem to put many of us in a defensive posture, even though we use these words all the time. When the financial planner tells us we need more diversity in our portfolio, well, we think they're doing a good job. But with people, we're all too happy to see each other as caricatures we've become comfortable with and reject anything that calls us to look deeper at the truth of our actions. So I'm sure you've had this experience. You find out you were wrong about something you thought was a universal truth. Maybe it was funny. Where were you when you found out they don't call it soccer everywhere? Or that some people actually don't like chocolate. Now, that one was a game changer. But sometimes the shift in reality is more consequential. I remember the first time I had a realization like this. Let's set the scene. It was the mid-1970s, and I was young, 6 or 7, when I went shopping with my mother for a birthday gift for Pamela Greenwood. Now, Pamela and I went to the same school, were in the same second grade class, and on occasion played at each other's homes. I was a pretty shy child back then, so having a friend at school was a big deal, and I wanted to get a good gift. As we walked through the toy section, I spotted it, a black baby doll. I'm not sure I'd ever seen one before. You'll have to remember that black dolls weren't so prevalent back then, and I've never really been a big fan of dolls, but that one I wanted to get right then and there. I grabbed it. Mama, look, a black doll for Pamela. My mother took one look at that thing and said, Mia, that's not a black doll. It's a white doll, dipped. I was so confused. But then I looked closer and I saw it. The upturned nose, bubblegum pink blush, and super thin lips that didn't reflect anything I saw in the mirror. Is this how someone sees me? That doll represents the challenge that many of us are having with DEI right now. We want to dip our companies in diversity without doing the deep transformative work that makes a real difference. Some of our efforts have been so superficial that they haven't achieved change any deeper than the color on that doll. At a time when many companies' commitment to inclusion is fading away faster than my New Year's resolutions by February, we've still left so much unanswered. Are we really okay with the distance we have right now between who we say we are and how we actually show up? We're good people, we tell ourselves, but we're letting our commitment to diversity just show up as empty buzzwords and corporate mission statements and long faded yard signs. If we're really going to improve ourselves and by extension our communities, then we all have to tap in. Because frankly, we haven't earned the right to put this initiative down yet. You might think that the lesson my mother gave me in the store that day was harsh. That she could have just let me be happy. Let's get this doll, wrap it up, and get this birthday party over with. But she had to give me that truth. And I think she knew that that first break in my vision would begin to shape my worldview and who knows, might lead to the career I have today. But she taught me to act in truth. And that's what we have to do too. So the truth is that many of us, people and companies alike, have underleveraged DEI and called it a failure. I've heard so many stories over my career that exemplify this. Stories of women who, despite having been hired for their technical expertise and leadership skills, are passed over during the promotion process because, well, we're not sure she can lead a team of all men. Veterans with the experience to keep our nation safe day in and day out, who have to justify their break in corporate service during the recruiting process. And companies who put pictures of happy employees on the website, when the reality on the ground is a lot more complicated. Some of those very employees hired for their unique capabilities are being told their natural hair is unprofessional. The way they worship is somehow political. And the company store that has all the coolest branded swag just can't carry their size. Businesses create systems to support equity and achieve company goals, and then undermine them time after time. And let's not forget the recent examples of companies who, when facing both internal and external critique, made all manner of commitment to improve the hiring and retention of people of color. And for a time, they did. In 2021, the year after the senseless murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and too many others, there was indeed a shift. According to a Bloomberg report, S&P 100 companies more than doubled the percentage of people of color in professional, managerial, and executive roles, increasing by a record-setting 2%. And then, while congratulating themselves for all of their accomplishments, they quietly cut funding and shuttered their DEI teams when the blaze of the media turned to the next crisis. As long as we rely on tragedy to fuel our diversity efforts, we are destined to fail. Whether we want to face it or not, the data are clear. More diverse organizations are better organizations, culturally and importantly, financially. They're more innovative, productive, and sustainable. Now, that's just the evidence-based truth. So if we're for any of those things, then we're for diversity, whether we think we are or not. Our problem isn't diversity or the term DEI, though we are desperately trying to make it the culprit. Our problem is that we lack the collective fortitude to look ourselves in the mirror and tell ourselves that people who look, love, or pee differently than us aren't inherently inferior. I sometimes hear people say that while they may not have gender or disability diversity on their team, they have diversity of thought. And this, as it turns out, can just be a comfortable illusion. It's like getting dressed for your workout, filling your water bottle, and grabbing your yoga mat, and never actually breaking a sweat. And then ultimately wondering why we're not more fit. Diversity has so many proven positive outcomes, but it gets tarnished by our inability to really engage with one another. A study out of Tufts University found that while homogeneous juries come to quicker decisions, more racially diverse ones are more thorough, discuss more facts of the case, and make fewer errors. The same has been shown for gender diversity as well. Rereading those studies made me think of a saying that I first heard while I was in Ghana. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Now, before we can go together, though, we got to come back to this truth about ourselves, about each other, and about the world. Reputable data is a great place to start, so here's a stat to get you started. A 2013 study found that 75% of white Americans reported having absolutely no friends of color. This in a nation where on the last census, over 40% of the population identified as a racial or ethnic minority. Now, before any of us are tempted to think, oh, well, I've got plenty of fill in the blank friends, let's be sure they would call us a friend too. If you're counting your Muslim college roommate from 20 years ago who you only see at reunions, or the neighbor who's a double amputee who you wave at occasionally, and your daughter wants interviewed for her middle school project entitled Someone Who Inspires Me, you might just have your friendships dipped. You may not be seeing them as they really are. Now, why the focus on friendships? Because forming genuine relationships with people who are different from you allows you to see through to the traits and behaviors that make good friends and colleagues and societies. And I have indeed found this maxim to be true. It's hard to hate each other up close. Additionally, we can't normalize having a Latina as a leader if we don't first normalize seeing her as smart. And true friendships can do that. The truth is also that most of us want a world, and have our children inherit one, where our most intractable problems like poverty, war, and disease have been solved. Well, if that's so, then protesting about which pronouns the kid who sits next to our kid in class uses doesn't serve this purpose. An estimated 40% of Americans will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. Now, if that's you or someone you love, I guarantee you want the cure, no matter whether he, she, or they came up with it. So I'm challenging each of us to be honest with ourselves. I've wondered often how that doll ever made it on a shelf. Who was the decision maker and whose voices weren't heard in the process? But if I'm being honest, though, I've made a doll decision or two in my lifetime. Which one are you making now? Whose voice do you need to hear to bring the best version of yourself to our collective table? Many of us have read books and articles about diversity, but how have we actually changed? Did you listen to that podcast with someone else in mind instead of you? Shelley really needs to hear this. Some of us need the gift of truth my mother gave me in the store that day. But our news echo chambers and predictable social media feeds are the very enemy of this truth. So too are the things we were taught as truths long ago that we've never re-examined, like, what should a doll made in the image of a Black girl look like? Now, you might have different or even deeper truths to examine, but my point is you'll know you're getting somewhere when you're downright uncomfortable. When your fight or flight senses make you want to do both at the same time, you're nearly there. I do want you to take heart, though, in knowing that just today I looked it up. No one has yet died of discomfort. We'll be okay. To misquote a popular movie line, we can handle the truth. Someone I love very much tells me from time to time, I can help you feel better or I can help you be better, but I can't do both. So in the end, I hope two things. I hope that Pamela eventually got a Black baby doll, a real Black baby doll, because on that day in the toy aisle, we settled on a watercolor set. And I hope that each of us chooses to be better, because our success is collective and it depends on it. Thank you.